everyone, and welcome back to Mariana Maths Books. My name is Mariana, and today I am here with my TBR, or rather pile of possibilities, for the Read Good Challenge. The Read Good Challenge is a year-long reading challenge organized by Ben at Ben Reads Good and it consists of 12 prompts, so one prompt per month, and it's year long, and the idea is that you find a book for each prompt, and then throughout the year you will read all 12 books. I love year-long challenges. When I first started my channel, there was a challenge going on that was called the Reading Women Challenge, and the whole reason I opened my channel was, well, two reasons. One was that I wanted to do my mid-year freakout tag, but then the other was that I was participating in the Reading Women Challenge and I wanted to share my TBR and my progress. If you go back to my first videos, I think some of my first videos were about the Reading Women Challenge. And what I love about year-long prompts or year-long challenges is that they are perfect for someone like me who enjoys making TBRs for challenges, in that I love finding books that fit prompts. That is one of my favorite hobbies. But then also someone who constantly changes their TBR. As you know, if you've watched my channel before, I love making piles of possibilities, and then I end up changing whatever it is that I said I was going to read, but I do keep the prompts because I love discovering new books. And so for a year-long challenge, you have a year's worth of discovering new books by looking for books for the prompts, and it's pretty manageable. I actually discovered this challenge through modern Ajuma, and other channel that I really love. If you haven't watched her, I also highly recommend her channel. And if you enjoy my channel, in that I read a lot of things and it's like a wide variety and it's like a very omnivore style of reading, I think you will really like modern Ajuma if you haven't yet seen her channel. Anyway, so she did a video where she shared her TBR for the Read Good Challenge, and she said, please join me, please join us for this challenge, it's super fun. So I watched the video, I saw, year-long challenge, fun prompts, say no more, I'm in. The other only year-long challenge I'm participating in is Historathon, and Historathon doesn't have prompts, so it doesn't feel like too much, It feels like something I can add to my year, and it won't be too overachieving, hopefully, because when you see this TBR, I mean, this is not really a TBR, it's more a pile of possibilities. I wanted to do something with this challenge that would complement my reading goals for the year. I didn't want to just go completely rogue as I tend to do when I find something fun and I'm just like, okay, then let's add 12 new books and not take into consideration my goals. So this time I said, okay, I want to take into consideration my goals. What can I do? How can I make this interesting both for me and also, to watch the video? And what I thought was this. If you watch my goals video, you know that this, for me, I decided is going to be the year of history, fantasy, and classics. So those three are things I enjoy. History, historical stuff, historical nonfiction or fiction or vibes is very much my thing. I'm not going to go into that. You can watch my goals video, but history, fantasy, and classics, those are my main three. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to make this TBR focusing on history, fantasy, and classics. And then also my other goal was a low buy. So most of the books that I want to talk about today are books that either I own or I don't have to buy, meaning that I can access them through my audiobook subscription, or that I can access them through like Project Gutenberg or Kindle Unlimited. Now, there are some exceptions because, well, I'm me. But mostly they are books that either I own or I don't have to buy. And for most of the prompts, I have more than one book that focuses in the history, fantasy, classics category, with a few exceptions because, again, I'm me. But mostly it's history, fantasy, and classics. Some of these prompts have all of the categories, some of them only have two books. You will see. It will be very fun to hear in the comments who is participating, thinking of participating, or if you can think of a good book for any of the prompts. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead with the prompts and show you the books that I am considering for each prompt. January's prompt is called Ann-uary, and for this one you have to read a book that is either written by an author named Anne, or that in the title of the book it has the word Anne, the name Anne. And it can be either Anne spelled like that, or Anne, Annie, whatever form of Anne that you find or that you want to read. I do have actually a book for each of the categories, so classic, fantasy, etc., for this prompt. Now, we are in February, obviously, so January has already passed, but I still have my pile of possibilities for this prompt, and I am going to aim to, throughout the year, read a book for this prompt, because as of now I'm very motivated to finish this challenge by the end of the year. So funnily enough, the first name that came to mind when I heard this prompt was neither of my categories, and it was Ann Patchett, and that is because in December I read Tom Lake, and it's become one of my all-time favorite books, and it was a top book of the year if you watch my favorite books video, and I absolutely loved it, and I was very curious to continue reading Ann Patchett. So that's the first name that came to mind, and a book that I've been wanting to read by her even since before I read Tom Lake is her essay collection These Precious Days, and that is because it was a part of the Book Prize the year that I was a judge in it. But I also have a book for each of the other three categories. So for fantasy or speculative fiction, I have Ann Leckie. I have always wanted to read Ann Leckie. She is a science fiction writer, and I mostly read fantasy, which is why I haven't read her. But her books sound right up my alley. So the two main books by her that I want to read are Translation State, which is about a translator, and honestly, sci-fi with a translator character, I am immediately in. And then there is another one called Ancillary Justice that features a sentient ship, which again, I'm in. Sentient objects are always super fun to read. So those are the two by Ann Leckie. Then moving on to the category of classics. And for classics, I would love to read Anne Radcliffe. Anne Radcliffe is a Gothic writer from the 19th century. She is one of the Gothic writers, and the two books at the top of my list by her are The Mysteries of Udolpho and The Italian. Those two are high on my list. And then for the category of history, I actually have a paper book here with me, and I feel like this is going to be the priority for this prompt. And that is The Body of Time by Ana Díaz. So in Spanish, El Cuerpo del Tiempo. I figured if Ben said that Annie and Anne were also okay, and any iteration of the Anne name were okay, I figured that Ana, which is the Spanish version of Anne, would also be okay. And this is a book about the way the Aztecs measured time and how they created created their calendars. They had 2 calendars. I'm not going to get into that. So obviously this one is a pick also for Historathon, for quarter 2 of Historathon. Maybe for quarter 2 I will pick this one up and I will also count it for this challenge. So February's prompt is Flame-uary, and Flame-uary is read a book with fire on the cover. Now it's not the word fire, it has to be an image of fire, but bonus points if you can find both. So I'm going to start with the one that I own because yes, keeping with my goals, and that is Farmer Giles of Ham by J.R.R. Tolkien. As you can see, there is a dragon on the cover and he has fire coming out of his nose. So there you can see the fire. This is a children's book by Tolkien, and if you saw my Scotland book haul, you may have seen that I picked this one and other 2 Tolkien up, but this one fits the prompt and I'm very excited to read it. So that's obviously fantasy, I think. Yes, dragons, fantasy. And then for history, I chose a historical fiction, and that is The Game of Kings by Dorothy Dunnet, which is book 1 in her Limon Chronicles series. I have been wanting to read this series for a long time since I read Gavriel K's poetry collection, and he has one poem dedicated to Dorothy Dunnet, and it was one of my favorite poems of the collection. And I googled who Dorothy Dunnet was, and I came up with this book, and I really want to read it. So here's the thing, I don't own this book, so I will have to break my low buy to read it. And then also, I mean, I did say low buy, not no buy, but I'm trying to not just run and buy any book at the excuse opportunity. I mixed my words. Anyway, the other thing is that this is book 1 in a series, and I feel like if I love it, which it sounds like I would, I'm going to want to read the others, and then I would have to buy not 1, but I don't remember 5 or 6 books. So that's the only caveat, but it would be a great excuse to buy it because it's for the prompt, So, February is a busy reading month for me. I have a lot of things on my TBR, so we'll see. But at least I would like to read Farmer Giles of Ham. The prompt for March is Ides of March, and that one is to read a book with 15 letters on the title. Spaces don't count, so literally just the letters, 15 letters. And for this one I have 2 options. So first one is fantasy, and this is another Tolkien, and it is Beren and Luthien. Beren and Luthien is a love tale, star-crossed, forbidden love type thing, because Beren is a human and Luthien is an elf, and this is one of those posthumous published books where it was edited by his son Christopher Tolkien. And the way I understand these editions work is that there are multiple versions of the work, so of Beren and Luthien, with commentary by Christopher Tolkien, I think. I don't know, I'm very much looking forward to reading this one. And then the other one is a history book that is also for Historathon, and that is City of Sacrifice by David Carrasco. The subtitle is The Aztec Empire and the Role of Violence in Civilization. So it's about, human sacrifices and such in the Aztec culture. Super fascinating, super interesting. I'm very, very fascinated about the sacrifices topic, and I have talked about it at length in Historathon videos, so I'm not going to talk about it at the moment. Then for April is to read a book that has been either long listed, short listed, or won the Women's Prize, either for fiction or non-fiction. And for this one, I'm literally only giving myself one option. I knew right away what I wanted to read, and the reason why I'm only mentioning this one is because I don't want to give myself any excuse not to read this book that has been on my TBR since it came out, since it won. And it's one of my friends' favorite books. It's the favorite book of one of my friends. My sister read it and she wants to talk about it with me. She read it since it won. I've had it on my TBR. There is no excuse for me not to read this. I know I'm going to love it. I know I'm going to love the author. It's Pure and Easy by Susanna Clarke. There is no good reason why I haven't read this book. Right up my alley. I know I'm going to love it. I should have read it the year it won. No excuse. Not even going to give myself options, even though almost all of the nonfiction Women's Prize books I want to read. I'm not giving myself excuses. If I don't read this book for this challenge at the end of the year, you have permission to scream at me in the comments. May's prompt is Déjà vu. So read a book you have already read, reread a book, or an author you have already read. There are a myriad of options for this prompt, things that I could read, books that I want to reread, and I mean, I can think of a million authors that I have already read that I want to read more from. So what I'm going to mention is from my shelves, a book that I'm super excited about, that when I looked at my shelves it jumped at me. At the moment, this is the one that is looking at me, screaming at me, or should I say singing at me, wink wink, because it is The Song of My Seed. The Song of My Seed is a 12th century, late ends of 12th century, beginnings of 13th century Spanish epic poem in the tradition of the chanson de geste or songs of deeds, which features deeds of an important hero or knight. In this case, it is the Spanish knight Rodrigo Díaz de Vivar. I first read The Song of My Seed in 2023, I want to say, and it was one of my top 5 books of the year. I adored the poem. I have, I think, a couple of videos dedicated to it. One of them where I go on a weird rant about men's facial hair. Anyway, I'm going to link it down below if it's of interest to you. As you know, I love medieval literature, and this year I do want to read more medieval literature. When I gave myself the goal to read more classics, I do also want to read. I include medieval literature in that category. Now, this particular version, and the reason why I want to read it and why it's singing to me, is because this is an adaptation of The Song of My Seed to Alexandrine verse. I think Alexandrine is a word, the verse where you have 14 syllables. So that is not the verse that the poem is written in, but this author took the poem, translated it to the modern Spanish, and put it to the Alexandrine verse. So I think it's a super cool idea, a super cool concept, and I am very eager to read this one, which is also a beautiful hardback edition. So yeah, that would be my pick, my top pick for Déjà vu. So then the prompt for June is shame forgiveness. So it's read a book that either how do I explain it? So a book that you're ashamed that you haven't read for whatever reason. So like it could be a book that you've owned for a long time, or that you've said that you were going to read for a long time, or a book that you said you read but you actually didn't read, or a book that you are ashamed to read because of what people would say, but in June you can read it. That's the idea. And this is another prompt where I also only have one book, but there are other prompts where I do have more options. So for this one, I again, the same as Piranesi, I only have one book because I don't want to give myself any excuse not to read this one, because the shame is real, okay? It is real. And the reason why I haven't read this one, and this one I am very aware of why, is because it's a fantasy book, but it's not my necessarily my type of fantasy book. So if you have seen my channel, if you know my tastes, I like slow paced, quiet fantasy. I like fantasy that takes its time, and I prefer, not only, I have exceptions obviously, but usually I prefer fantasy written by women. I have noticed this, and this particular author is an author that I had already tried, and I DNF'd one of his books, but it's the favorite author of one of my close family members, and they would love for me to read this author and to comment a book with them. They actually gifted me the book that I DNF'd for Christmas, and I feel super bad about it. But then they recommended me, and also Elle, my friend Elle, they have recommended me that I read this other book, and that this one I might like. And I have been telling my family member that I'm going to read this book since forever. Forever. And I feel like I break their heart a little bit every day I don't start this book. No more, no more. This is the year. And that is Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This is, I think, a book where magic is based on colors, which is a concept that I do find appealing, but in a hard magic system, shame forgiveness. This is the year. This is the year. Oh, I'm looking at my pile, and I actually did grab another book that I'm going to show you just for the lols. And that is the Makioka Sisters by Junichiro Tanizaki. And this one is a book that my mom and I bought years ago because we were going to read it together, and we haven't read it. And we said this is going to be the year, so I thought it would also fit for this prompt. Next one is a fun prompt, and for July is a work in translation. And for this one I thought, okay, you know what would be fun? I feel like most people read adult books in translation, either literary fiction. I think mostly what you see in translation is literary fiction, right? And I feel like genre fiction is forgotten when it comes to translated fiction, and also children's books. And so I have a list of 4 books that are a variety of age ranges and a variety of genres, but they do fit for genre fiction, except for one which I feel like I would call literary dystopian. But I'm going to give you all 4 because why not? Because I can, because it's fun, and because we should read more translated literature. And so my first option is one of the most beautiful books I own, actually, The Land of Stone Flowers by Sveta Dorosheva. This one is translated from the Russian by Jane Bugaeva, and this one is a children's picture book. It is absolutely gorgeous. If you are seeing images on screen, it's because I actually got around to filming the interiors of the book. The subtitle of this book is A Fairy Guide to the Mythical Human Being. So this one is written as if it was authored by the fairy, and it's the foreword is by a gnome character, and the fairies are studying the humans. So this is an encyclopedia of humans written by fairies for fairies. That is the concept. Super fun, and it's translated from the Russian. Then to move up in age range, I have a middle grade book by a Palestinian author, which was originally written in Arabic, and it is Thunderbird by Sonia Nimmer, and this one was translated from the Arabic into English by Marcia Links Qualley. I don't know if I don't know how to pronounce her name. This one is about a girl, a Palestinian girl who travels back in time to save the future, save the planet. Then also by Sonia Nimmer, also written by in Arabic and translated by the same translator, is an adult book that is very fairy tale like, and it is about a woman, Palestine woman, that is based on a real life Moroccan traveler from the 14th century called Ibn Battuta, one of those famous medieval travelers, in this case a Moroccan traveler, and the main character, who is called Kamar, is a Palestinian woman in those times, and she is based on this traveler. Now, this book is very fantastical, but it's not precisely fantasy. It's like every chapter is a tale of one of her travels, and there are fantastical elements, but more in like a tale. Like it is like telling a tale every chapter. And this one and that one I'm reading, haven't finished it yet, but I wanted to talk about it because again, we should talk more about translated genre fiction. And then another one that is also translated from the Arabic, but the author is Egyptian, and this one I have read, and this one I would call literary dystopia, and it is The Queue by Basma Abdel Aziz, and this one is translated from the Arabic into English by Elizabeth Jacquet. This one is a dystopia where the dystopic element is based around bureaucracy. That is why I picked it up, and actually this is a book I read for the Reading Women Challenge, the one I talked about at the beginning of the video. Then for July-August we have a read a book by a Booker winning author, so you don't have to necessarily read the book they won with, but just an author that has won the Booker. Now in my case I do have a Booker winning book, which I have been wanting to read since forever, which is a theme in every TBR I make, and this one I can access through my audio subscription, and it is Possession by A.S. Bayat. This one I think is about a couple of academics who are doing some research, and they come across letters from long ago, and so it's kind of like reading the letters and also following these two academics. It sounds like 5 million stars to me. I feel like I'm going to love it, and yeah, that would be my choice. I didn't even have to think about it. And then for September we have Sapphire September, and that is read a book with a blue cover. I have a lot of really amazing books with blue books that I own on my shelves, and like I was going to show you all of them or a lot of them, but again I don't want to make this video super long, so for this one I am also going to show you the one that at the moment is calling to me the most. Is actually one of my exceptions because it's neither history nor fantasy nor classics, and it is also from my Scotland book haul, Kate Moss, An Extra Pair of Hands, and the subtitle is A Story of Caring and Everyday Acts of Love. And this is a book where she talks about her caring for her elderly parents. I picked this one up in a super cool indie bookstore in Edinburgh in the disability justice section. I was really obsessed with the fact that they had a disability justice section, and I picked several books up, one of which is also blue actually, and also in my shelf, but this is the one I chose for this prompt. I will tell you which one I read if I do a wrap-up video for this challenge. You know, this is a big if with me because I have commitment issues when it comes to books. For October, it's Ug-tober, and it's to read a book with an ugly cover. Funnily enough, this gave me a lot of problems. I had a hard time choosing, and that's funny because I think that I often think to myself, that is such an ugly cover. As a designer, I can be a snob about that, and for some reason I couldn't find ugly covers. I don't know if it's because I don't generally, I'm not attracted to books with ugly covers. I don't know, but so I'm going to show you two. The first one is the least offensive one, and it's one that I could have also picked for shame forgiveness, because it's a book that, as a Mexican, I have no excuse, and it is Pedro Páramo by Juan Rulfo. And actually, the reason why I picked this cover is because the cover is super super beautiful. The original, like this version, this edition is super beautiful, and I had this on my Kindle through Kindle Unlimited, and then one day I opened my Kindle and this version was on the Kindle. We all hate a movie tie-in cover, but I feel like this is even worse somehow, where it's just like it's neither the original cover nor the full tie-in. It's just a thing there. But again, this is not super offensive because I can visualize the original cover in the background. But then I found another one, and it's a book that I actually do really, really want to read throughout the year. And the reason why I didn't just show you this one for this prompt, it's because I wouldn't read this particular edition of this book. So I feel like it would be cheating, because it's like, yes, there are many books that have ugly covers. We could pick whatever of those, but if we are not reading from that edition, then it's not really covering this prompt. But I'm going to show it to you just because of the level of actual garbage can material, super offensive for my eyes, that it is. And before I show you the cover, I need to give you the context of this book. So this is another medieval epic poem, another chanson de geste. This is from the 11th century, and it is about a knight from the court of Charlemagne and from a famous battle in history. So it's the heroic deeds of this 11th century French knight in this battle. I want to emphasize 11th century French knight, medieval 11th century. So I was googling, looking for an edition of this book, because for medieval works I do like to look for good editions, and I came across this. Why? Words fail me. What is this steampunk nightmare? Forget the fact that the design is awful, that the type is awful, that the colors, that everything is like, just forget about that. What the hell is this steampunk key, I guess, nightmare doing in an 11th century text? What was the thought process behind that? Anyway, moving on because I just have 2 more prompts to go and I need to wrap this up. November is No Comfort November, and for this one, it's also one of my exceptions, which is, I guess, obvious because classics, fantasy, and history are my comfort zone, and if this is no comfort, then I have to pick outside of my comfort zone. So it's yeah, and this one is a book by a Mexican author who recently won the Pulitzer with this book. But I haven't read it because the topic scares me, and so it's no comfort in that sense. But I really want to read it because I've always wanted to read this author, and that is Liliana's Invincible Summer, a sister's quest for justice, I think is the subtitle in English. I would read this one in the original Spanish, El Invencible Verano de Liliana. This one is about, so Cristina Rivera Garza, the author, her sister was murdered by her boyfriend years ago, and there was never any justice done. And this is a book about that, where Cristina Rivera Garza comes to terms with that. Like, years have passed, and now she's writing and coming to terms with that. So it's kind of like an homage to her sister and also talking about that. Now, anything that relates to femicide in Mexico as a Mexican woman living in Mexico scares me. It scares me. The topic scares me. And, the death of a sister is like, as someone who has 2 sisters, it sounds like a hard book to read, but also I really want to read it. So it's really no comfort, but I would love to be able to read this book. And then for December, I love the prompt for December. The prompt is Decem-bros. And Ben in his video, he said, nowadays you can't go to a library without stumbling across a book about sisters. So let's read something about brothers. And I love the prompt because I really love brotherhood in books. Hey guys, popping by real quick on a different day, as you can see, just because after I finished filming the video, I came up with the perfect thing to read for this prompt. Okay, I just lost one earring, but this is the 3rd time that I'm filming this clip, so I'm just going to roll with it. As I was saying, after I finished filming the video, I came up with the perfect thing to read for this prompt. I honestly can't believe that I hadn't thought about it before. It's something, as you may have guessed, that I have been wanting to read since forever, probably since high school or university. Most likely university, which is when I was in my hipster era, and that is the Letters to Theo from Van Gogh. Now, the compilations in English I could find are just titled Letters of Van Gogh or something along those lines, but in Spanish the compilations are always titled Letters to Theo, which is how I knew the book, and that's what popped into my mind when I thought of this prompt, rather after I finished filming the video. When I was editing, it suddenly dawned on me, Letters to Theo, perfect choice. I've been wanting to read it since forever. They are supposed to be very moving, and I mean, if you know anything about Van Gogh's life, they are most likely going to be super moving. I'm honestly pretty stoked and pretty set on this choice for this prompt. And yeah, I just think it's a perfect excuse to finally read them. My original idea was to pick a fantasy book because I feel like there are many fantasy books with this trope of like the band of brothers, or even with found family. But as soon as Letters to Theo popped up in my mind, I just as of now, I'm pretty set on this one for this prompt. Phew, so that would be it. Those are the 12 prompts, and that's my pile of possibilities. Super fun challenge. I am glad that modern Ajuma did her video, and I've also discovered other channels through this challenge. I will link the videos that I've seen down below. Of course, Ben's channel, all of the channels mentioned. And yeah, I'm not going to keep talking. This has been long enough as it is. I would love to hear from you in the comments with whatever you want to comment, and if you want to participate, then please do. It sounds fun. There is a storygraph challenge if you are a storygraph user. And yeah, that would be it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you soon with another bookish video, and in the meantime, I wish you happy reading.